Okay, so welcome to another episode. I think this one's the fifth one. Our weekly hang with Nick Granville in Wellington, myself in Auckland. And Nick, I think, had a busy week. So did I. The previous one, I had two gigs. One with my friend Ben at this venue. My wife and her workmates, they came and had a bit of a boogie while we were playing. That was cool. And the second one was with Cat Tunks in Piha, which is a beautiful place. And my wife and daughter had come along as well. So it's always nice when they come along because, it's almost like I know that they're listening. And they listen to
Yeah,
me playing a lot of garbage at home. So it's nice to actually play some nice music and try
they get to
to.
hear the effects of it all. It's
Yeah.
funny you say that. I had a gig many years ago, not meaning to name drop, but it was with Midge, and
Hmm.
my daughter goes, "That's my dad." In the middle of the town hall. She was about 3 or 4 at the time. It was one of her first gigs. It was super cute. Everyone kind of laughed and went,
Yeah. The last time we played in Bombay, my my daughter, she told my wife that she wants to introduce us. So we said, yeah, sure, you can introduce us. And so she was planning this. Dad, I'm going to tell them that you may be a great guitar player, but at home you fought a lot.
When you think about it, they get to hear us at our worst, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because when you're practicing, you really shouldn't be sounding good. Because if you are, then you're performing, aren't you? Really, when
Yeah.
you're home, you're working on your stuff.
Yeah. They listen to so much garbage, the poor things. Sometimes I feel sorry for them. And sometimes it can get loud, especially when you're testing gear. You don't want to test it at mouse fart volumes, right? You want to
Yeah,
get a bit
yeah.
of a so like sometimes I actually wait till they're both out of the house and then I was like, okay, now I'm gonna turn the, amp up a
But it's
little
an
bit
interesting
more.
thing, isn't it? The Fletcher Munson curve, how it works,
Yep.
that
It does.
you can test things at low volume, but it just doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
You can't.
It works differently.
It works
I've got
differently.
I've gotten great guitar sounds at very low volumes. That in fact my first album was recorded that way. Like the amp was like, not even not even on one. It was like somewhere. It was an old JCM 800, but I still managed to make it sound good. It took some EQing and stuff like that. So the only thing is having it louder makes it easier. You're not
Well,
working as
and
hard.
you have the effect of the bottom end that happens. The
Exactly.
way
Yeah.
our ears perceive bottom end.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I was watching a thing of Tom Bukovac the other day, and he was talking about how for him, like the ideal setting is a deluxe or a Princeton on between 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And he said that's where it's all at. And then, I was like, wow, okay. Maybe you crunch it up a little bit more and, maybe use this as ODR or whatever. But
Yeah.
I thought, gee, that's not particularly loud. And he said, no. And then this thing, he said, no, he doesn't play particularly loud.
Yeah.
I always assumed he did because of the way he plays. He's got a very forward, big punch to his sound.
I'm willing to bet that his boost and drive pedals are set past Unity because
I
that
think so.
Unity gain thing, at least for me, is a myth. I'm always hitting the amp slightly harder than just plugging straight in.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I just plug straight in,
Yeah, yeah,
like
exactly.
I'm doing right
There's no
now
benefit of
with
his
the
unity, right?
exactly. I mean, or like the Bella, for example, if you have it turned up to 6 or something like that, you don't really need a pedal. You can get that,
Yeah.
drive and stuff from it. And sometimes, like when you get a little crazy, you can have it around 8 or something, and that it sings at that point. It's like the best distortion pedal in the world. But yeah, I mean, all these guys, I think they're boosting into the amps a little bit, especially if they're set that clean.
Yeah, totally, totally. Oh, cool, man. Did I tell you I did a 5-hour blues the other day? I got to 50 episodes of doing the YouTube videos for my channel. It's been interesting. It's been a real learning curve. But I thought, what am I going to do for episode 50? And I had some really dumb ideas. And then I came up with the dumbest idea, which was I'm going to play a blues for 5 hours. And yeah, it was a pretty dumb idea. But I actually learned a whole bunch of stuff out of it. And
I'm sure, man, to sustain it even past like 2 minutes sometimes takes a bit of an effort.
totally. Well, I've done half an hour before. I've played a whatever tune, not necessarily a blues, but I've played something constantly without stopping for half an hour. And I've done that, and I knew kind of what that parameter would be like. But without actually ever trying going longer than that, I had no idea. It was all just a guess. So I thought, why the heck not? And I
Yeah,
I set
totally.
my little GoPro up because that's the only camera I've got that will record for 5 hours, and I kind of left it going. It was really funny, man. I stood on the lead at one point because I had to stand up because my back was getting sore, and I stood on the lead and it came out, and I thought, so I kept
Legato,
and then
yeah.
trying to plug it back in, and then I had to eat, which was quite funny because you get hungry or thirsty. but yeah, I learned some stuff about my playing, so that was kind of interesting. And had a recording session last night, which was yeah, interesting. Just duo with a trumpet player.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we did 3 jazz standards, and then he's got this sort of DJ booth thing he's built with 2 loop pedals, and he can kind of fade between the loop pedals,
Hmm.
and then he has a whammy pedal for his trumpet and a EQ pedal and one of those TC Nova delays.
I love it when non-guitar players use pedals, you know.
Yeah,
They always give you like new ways to use it, yeah. I was talking about your, 5 hours of blues playing. Have you ever fallen asleep while you're playing and then woken up and you're still playing? Has it ever
yeah,
happened to you?
yeah. I don't know if I've actually like properly gone to sleep, like proper deep sleep, but
Mm,
I've definitely zoned out a few times where
yeah,
I've kind of that kind of out of body experience, if you know
yeah.
what I mean.
Hmm.
And that's when you play your best,
Yeah.
right? I've listened back to some of that stuff and I've gone, wow, that's like the best stuff that I didn't even know I was capable of. But
You
it's when
become a
you just kind
spectator
of let go.
almost, like, just detached and you're just watching everything happen.
Yeah,
And it's almost like it's channeling through you. You're just the
yeah.
antenna or the medium.
And it's
And you
probably
just,
happened 10, 15 times in my whole life of playing
yeah.
where I can succinctly think about that happening. Luckily, a bunch of them have been captured, but yeah, it's funny, isn't it? And that's the place we always try to get to, right?
Yeah. In the younger days, I didn't know how to control it. So I would get very excited and almost like my timing would start to rush when that
Yeah.
happened. And then you slowly learn to like, take a deep breath and just let it flow without, getting too involved in it.
Well,
Just
that's what I
detach
found
a
on the
bit.
recording session last night was
Yeah.
I didn't have my in-ears and they only had a pair of headphones, which were whatever, and I had my hat on and I sort of put the headphones on and they kept sliding off. So every time they'd slide off, I'd lose sound. And I just had the modeler and was going direct because that's what they wanted and they didn't want an amp in the room. They just wanted the trumpet clean. And I found that, I was losing my volume and then, because they kept sliding off and what have you. And of course, they had a weird headphone setup where only one headphone was guitar and one side was trumpet.
Hmm.
So, like, this kind of thing going on. And it was funny. I listened back to a bunch, like, we went and listened to the first track, and I was like, yeah, it feels all right. And then the next track, once it started slipping off, I was like, man, I was like rushing all over the place. And I was, because, couldn't hear. So I'm
Hmm.
trying to lock it in somehow with what
Yeah.
I could hear. And yeah, funny. And duo is like, it's scary,
Yeah, totally.
especially with a trumpet player too, because
Yeah.
he's gonna he's gonna play the tune and then maybe a solo and then the horn goes down
Yeah.
and it's all on you.
So
Yeah,
that's the final thing was just trumpet and guitar, was it?
just trumpet and guitar. Yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
then he had all this beat stuff that he was kind of working
Oh,
on.
okay.
So that was kind of fun. The beat stuff was interesting. Sort of. Do you know Lewis McCallum up in Auckland?
Yep.
Yeah, kind of like what Lewis does. Sort of
Right.
house music, dancey kind of stuff,
Yeah.
but sort of a jazz inflection on it, and yeah, it
Yeah.
was fun.
I was thinking actually today we could talk about a few great New Zealand guitar players.
Yeah,
So, do you want to start? I know a few, but yeah, I'll let you start.
Warren Mendonça.
Ah, nah, man.
Now,
The other
seriously, one of
ones.
my favorites.
Oh, you're too
Auckland
kind.
badass, without a doubt.
How,
But maybe we could start with Auckland because that's probably the place you know the best. I mean, Dixon Nacy is the first guy who comes to mind
yep.
out there. Dix. I'm sure you know Dix.
Yep. I've
One
heard
of my
him play
favorite
a few
guitar players,
times.
just a seriously bad dude. And for anyone who hasn't heard him play, plays sort of a mix of jazz stuff, but he's had an extensive career playing pop stuff and nowadays becoming a bit of a musical director.
Mm.
So I saw him conducting the Lakeside concert the other day and the Christmas in the Park and the Coca-Cola one, which I think has about 20,000 people at it or something. So he's getting some good gigs as a conductor. So, and great musician, great guy, great composer. Yeah, can't say enough good things about him.
Yeah. I think I first heard him play on some Solar Rosa stuff. That was really cool. And he's friends with another friend of mine in Bombay, Floyd Fernandez. That guy's got like some sick chops. I don't know if you've heard him, but maybe I can
No?
send you some stuff later to check out.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dixon's awesome. I mean, it's always been in the back of my mind to kind of take a lesson from him sometimes because it's just a matter of finding the time to do it. But yeah, I'd love to, do that
It's
at
funny,
some
man.
point.
Dix and I did a gig at in Auckland one time. About it must be 10 years ago now. 2 guitars, bass and drums, And we sort of put some material together and just stuff we both knew and kind of played. It was funny, all these, I don't know if I told you, but all these Auckland Uni students turned up because Dixon was teaching at Auckland Uni at the time. And they all turned up and they sat in the front row, and I saw a bunch of them sitting there and they were kind of pointing at me. And they were going, who's that guy? And I overheard one of them say, hey, some guy from Wellington. Dixon's going to waste him. This is what they said. Dixon's going to waste him. Like music's a competition, you know. Yeah. And I mean, it's like when you and I played. You know, it's not a competition. You play great. I do what I do. We find our middle ground and we just play some music together. You know, it's fun. And that's exactly what the gig was. But Dixon's going to waste him was there. And so it's funny. We did the gig and they all came up afterwards and they were like, "Do you have any CDs? Could you sign our CDs for us?" And I was like, "Gotcha."
Wasted them.
There's some great guitar players up in Auckland though. I mean, it's a shame Graham Bell's not up there anymore, but Graham was really good.
Yeah.
And Neil Watson sounds great, man. I've only met Neil once briefly, but he sounds really good at the stuff. Brett Adams, you probably know.
Yeah, Brett's awesome. He's
really good player.
Yeah, Brett plays a few gigs with Joel Mulholland, who's another amazing guitar player. So, since you've talked about all the Auckland ones, I'm going to talk about a few Wellington guitar players.
Oh, yeah?
I really love. The first one I kind of got hip to was Warren Maxwell from Trinity Roots.
Sure.
And
it's funny to think of Warren as a guitar player, though.
Yeah, but
I mean, he is, but
that's what his role was in that band, and it kind of just blew my mind. It could just be like so, open and spacey, and I think that's the first thing I kind of like learned from him is just the use of space. You don't have to fill every note or every bar.
Man, I knew him as a horn player. Like he used to play saxophone.
He used to play with Fat Freddy's as well, right?
Yeah, and he used to do like a whole lot of jazz gigs around town. Yeah. Like he went through jazz school and he kind of played in a lot of funk fusion things. There used to be this club called Tattoo that he used to play at. Okay. He used to do every Friday night, and it was the place to go, you know. And Warren was badass, you know. He could play like Maceo Parker, and he would do, you know, he was funky as heck, you know. He really sounded great. And then one day he just said, "No, I don't do this anymore. I'm just going to play guitar, and I'm going to write songs, and maybe I'll play a bit of piano or something." He's kind of like that. He kind of just switches and goes. He's very definite. This is the thing I'm doing. And so Trinity Roots, and they kind of blew up. And then he kind of went, well, what am I going to do now? Oh, I think I'll teach at a university. So he taught at Massey in Wellington. And now he's actually kind of quit doing all of that. And he's now teaching Te Reo at schools.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he's decided that the language is important and that people need to know it. And so it's totally, I completely agree. And so he's decided that's what he's doing. And I mean, he's a deep musician.
Yeah. You can tell, I mean, the roots go deep and, there's a lot that is felt but not said.
Totally.
Which is like
it's a natural thing, isn't it? Natural musical
it just
ability.
comes out, and you feel it, like it resonates. Another guy I was wanting to talk about was Darren Watson, an amazing blues guitar player.
Sure.
And I think Midge is the guy who turned me on to him. So you got to listen to this guy. He used to play with me like way back, and I did. And I was happy for that. So yeah, Darren's another awesome blues guitar player, and like a true blues guy, as opposed from hacks like us only dabble in it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean he's an interesting guy. I've known Darren for a very long time, and he's one of the few musicians in Wellington who's kind of decided what their path is. Because a lot of musicians do what not necessarily what I do, but a similar kind of path, and that it's not necessarily as prescribed. Like my path is a mix of blues, rock, jazz, funk, soul, whatever. I mean, whereas his is like very well prescribed, and he knows what it is, and he does it, and he's really, really good at it. I mean, especially acoustic. I don't know if you've ever heard him play acoustic guitar.
I have, yeah.
The acoustic blues thing is particularly happening, and very good singer too, really good singer. There's another guy, Tyson Smith, down here, is a really good guitar player too. He's a guitar player often with Holly Smith and a bunch of different bands around. He plays really great. He's good. Awesome. And then John O'Connor, who's another one. You probably don't know John O'Connor, but John was one of my teachers when I was at music school.
Okay.
John used to play with B.B. King and Chuck Berry and all these people like that, and he can really play. He's the guy who kind of taught me. I remember one day we finished the lesson, and I played a performance workshop that day, and he came up to me afterwards and he goes, Nick, he goes, you play really well, but your tone sucks. And I was like, oh, shit. Okay. And I went away and I took all my gear and I just kind of stripped it all down and I tried to figure out what I was doing. And I came back and I played like a couple of weeks later and he came up to me afterwards and he gave me a hug and he goes, I'm really sorry, I was really mean. He goes, but you play really great and I want you to sound great. And he goes, and that's exactly what you did today. He goes, your tone was infinitely better. But he kind of taught me the importance of tone, like in making a sound. And he's a really expressive player. He'll play like 2 or 3 notes and just kind of, I mean, it's that whole BB King thing of just draw everything out of you. It's really powerful.
Yeah.
He doesn't really play now. I think he's 70 now, and he's sort of, he's got a yacht, and he's sort of, he teaches a little bit, and he's sort of around. He was at a music school here for a while, and he kind of got into some studio recording and did a lot of that for a while, and then nowadays he still plays a little bit, but man, he's a killer player.
Yeah.
And then in Christchurch too, there's Harry Harrison. Do you know Harry?
No, I haven't heard Harry. Tell me about him.
Oh, Harry's great. He's the Warren Mendonça of Christchurch, who's on like a lot of gigs and playing a lot and plays a lot of music and a real tone connoisseur too. He's got an old casino and an old Strat and all kinds of really nice gear.
Sounds
and things.
Like the kind of guy we should get on the show sometime.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I think, and he's a bit older than us, so he's kind of been around a bit, But I mean, he's sort of the guy that does a lot of the top gigs that happen in Christchurch. So like if Dave Dobbin comes through, he's the guy, or Beck Runga, or the CSO, or those sort of gigs. But there's also a young female guitar player down there who's killing too, is Heather Webb. I don't know if you know Heather.
I think she's I may really have seen good. Yeah, something of hers on Instagram, I think. I'm not sure.
I thought she's pretty active on that kind of platform, and she plays really good, and she's doing a lot of the shows now, like all the theatre shows. She's pretty much the first call, and she's getting a lot of the Christchurch Symphony gigs and things, and reads really well and plays a lot of music well, and she's a really good player.
Awesome. And another band I got into when I just got back into New Zealand in 2020 was LAB, because I hadn't heard them while I was in India. And the guitar player Joel Shadbolt, he's awesome. I was just like listening to the new album that came out today. There's a song called Casanova. And I was just getting into the outro solo and the song ended, and I told him, I was like, man, that's my only complaint about the whole album is that solo is too short.
Yeah.
It's kind of like sometimes like the radio DJ will just fade out the thing, and you're like, oh man, that's like the best part of the song.
That's the problem. If you do a pop song and you put a guitar solo on the outro, guaranteed they're gonna fade you out, right? Or like a really extensive intro, it's like, come on.
The only one they don't fade out is Hotel California. I mean, like if they turn that down, I think people are gonna like call and protest.
I've heard them do it. I heard a certain radio station, I won't mention who, do it recently. It was that. And then it was, and it just
kept getting softer.
And I was like, oh, come on, like you're killing me, Yeah,
it's really sad when that happens.
Yeah, and they faded out one time on Comfortably Numb.
Oh jeez.
I know, on that big epic guitar solo, it was like faded out, and we have to go to the news now, and I was like, no.
Oh man, I remember even Still Got the Blues on. There's a greatest hits version, and that one's got a shorter guitar solo, and on the album version, it's got the whole one. And then like when I finally heard the album version, I was geez, like now I can finally
the worst one I've ever heard though was the beginning of Rock With You, Michael Jackson.
Oh yeah.
Boom, ba da 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 da. Right, it's like the most iconic drum fill. They often cut off the first part of it and you just get da 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 in. And I'm like, no.
Or they talk over the intro or something.
Yeah. There's a YouTube video which they've done that as well, where they've cut that first bar. Da 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 da. And it just goes da 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 in, and it's like, it's probably the greatest pop drum fill, most iconic ever. Right? And they cut it. J.R. Robinson.
Speaking of which, the intro to Joe Walsh's Life's Been Good. It always starts with that weird thing, but apparently the drummer he was on Joe Vitale. He was on Tom Bukovac's YouTube channel, and he said the tape machine locked up or something, and it lopped off the first kick drum hit,
Yep.
which is why it starts with a snare drum, and then if you actually hear it as with the kick drum starting, then the whole thing actually lines up, and you're like, for years and years I was trying to like, where the heck is the one in that song?
Did you see that thing of Michael? What, I can't remember his name, but he was the piano player with Steely Dan and all of that stuff. He did that.
Martian, yeah, man, that was an amazing episode.
It was so cool, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And he was talking about one of those songs where they accidentally took the bridge section and cut it at the beginning of the song, and that became the string intro. And when you hear it out of context, it's just stunning. But when you hear it within the song, it just kind of becomes another element. Yeah. I love those kind of happy mistakes. So I just recorded a YouTube video today, and I actually screwed up one section of it, but I was like, I'm going to leave it. I did an instrumental version of "Everybody Wants to Rule the World."
Oh, cool!
And after the last solo section, he goes back to and then it comes back after the bridge and stuff and goes. But I went back to the beginning of the B section. I was like, actually, it was a really cool kind of counterpoint thing going on. I was like, I'm just going to go with it. Yeah. Leave it.
Yeah, awesome.
I did a recording one time with a singer like that, and the piano player, really great piano player, Jonathan Crayford, he'd misheard what she'd said. He thought she'd said tag the ending 3 times, but she'd said tag the ending 2 times.
Okay.
So he played this chord progression where he went from E, and he went, and he ended up on a C chord against an E minor. But it was so cool. And we were just like, and he was like, no, you have to take it out. And we're like, no, it's staying in.
Let's see what that sounds like. You play an E minor, I'll play the C. Yeah.
It might have been, it was Hey Joe we were playing.
Okay.
And he went.
Oh, okay.
Right, and he heard that C as being, well, we're going to go back to it for the 3rd time. But the rest of the band was like E minor. But he kind of, because he's such a great musician, he played that C and kind of tailed off it, and it worked, and we left it in, and it was great. It was on the record.
I watched this version of Eric Gale's play Little Wing. And, everyone ends with the but he kind of came to the end of the song and he just kept on looping that. I was like, man, that's so cool. I'm going to play that every single time I play that song now.
I remember doing a gig with this Scottish drummer in Wellington. He's a bit crazy. He's really fun. And he said, okay, we're going to play Take the A Train. I'm sure you know that tune. That tune, right?
You won't believe it, but when I was 3 years old, that was my favorite song in the world.
Really?
Because my dad was playing bass on it for one of the local shows. And I was like, I just love that song.
It's really cool, isn't it? But there's a middle section that goes.
Yeah.
And the drummer said, I just want to play that bit, and that's it. So that became the melody of the song. That's all we did, was that little bit. And that was the head of the song. And I was like, oh, it's kind of cool.
It is.
And it became the thing, you know what I mean? Because everybody knows that section, but they couldn't quite put their finger on how they knew it or where.
True. Yeah. It takes a bit of thinking to do that. Do you have any favorite underrated rock guitar riffs?
Good question. Underrated is the hard question, but I mean, the first riff that always comes to mind is
Black Dog, yeah.
It's just such a great guitar riff, you know what I mean?
Did you learn that other bit? Did you learn that other bit with the sped up timing as well?
That bit.
That bit, yeah. I
Yeah.
kind of listen. What's it go? Right? He always speeds that last bit up. It sounds so awesome
But
when he
it's
does that.
great, isn't it?
It is.
And he
Yeah.
does it every time, so I'm sure it's deliberate, right?
Yeah.
Did
It
I
sounds
did I ever
good.
tell you that I saw Jimmy Page at a restaurant in London when I was there?
Really?
And I was in Kensington, which is apparently where he lives. And I walked into this Chinese restaurant and I got some lunch and I sat in the window, and this guy literally, the door flung open and came right next to me and it almost hit me. I kind of went like that, and right there is Jimmy Page. And I'm like, holy shit. And I'm like, do I go and talk to him? And I'm like, nah. I'm like, and he went and he sat at the other end of the restaurant.
Yeah.
By restaurant I mean like this place is like like a little dive place. It's not a nice place, And he sat down there with some friend of his with long hair and a cap, poet-looking guy, type dude. And they sat and they chatted, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to disturb them because they're talking. And so I didn't. And I was like, I still to this day regret not going and talking to him.
Oh, no.
But I text a friend of mine who's the biggest Led Zeppelin fan ever. And I said, Jimmy Page is at this restaurant I'm at. And he was like, holy crap. He goes, okay, I'm leaving work like right now. I'm coming down there.
I ran into Walter Becker once in New York.
Wow.
We had 3 days of downtime, and luckily the promoter had us in Times Square. And I decided to obviously go to the guitar shop down the road, which was, the what's it called, Guitar Center, which had the Clapton guitars and everything, on display. But there was also another shop called 30th Street Guitars, and they were on 27th Street. It took me a while to figure that out.
What the heck? So, did they move or something after
They
took the name?
moved, but they didn't
Right.
change the name. Yeah. So anyway, so this shop was really cool. It had a bunch of old used pedals and stuff like that. So I thought I'll go and check it out. And I remember it was a way huge pork loin. That's the one I was checking out. And I went into the trial booth to plug into an amp, turn it up, and everything. And I came out of the thing, and this Walter Becker sitting down there on top of an amp holding a Strat. And I almost
Wow.
dropped the pedal because it's like almost a double take. It's like, is that actually him? So I looked at the guy behind the counter. I said, "Is that like?" He said, "Yeah, it is. He comes here on a regular basis, and he just like tells stories and stuff like that." And
It's
has a
probably
good
like
time."
the place that's around the corner from
Yeah,
his apartment or
exactly.
something, you know what I mean? And
Pretty
he's-
much.
Yeah.
That's exact. So I didn't like want to go and bug him like while he's sitting at his favorite guitar store. So I just let him, and he was telling us a story about he had a '63 Strat, and it needed like either a fret job or something like that. And when he got it back, the guy said, "Oh, by the way, the pickups were sounding a bit weak, so I rewound them." And then like his eyes became wide,
Oh,
and he's
no.
like, "Why did you rewind the pickups on my vintage '63 Strat?" He's saying,
Yeah.
"But I didn't know that guy was Bill Lawrence, and it actually sounded better after he rewound them."
Yeah, but still, I don't know. That's a
Yeah,
bit...
but this was way back, before the whole.
Because it's a personal taste thing
Yeah,
too, right?
exactly.
Even if it sounds like what does sound better, it could be someone's opinion, couldn't
Yeah,
it? You know what I mean?
exactly.
Just don't mess
But-
with it. That's why you got to be really careful about who you take your gear to. I've seen guitars that were great go from being great to be average after someone's messed with it,
Yeah.
And you can't necessarily get it back. Sometimes you can.
Yeah.
But-
There's a part two to the story. So when I got back to the hotel, my wife called and she said, "I think I'm pregnant and expecting our first child."
Wow.
So I was like, funny, like a strange day, like with many twists in it.
Yeah,
Meet Walter
I'll bet.
Becker and yeah. And then when our kid was born, the doctor said, "Put on some music, it'll calm her and everything like that." So I started like playing all her favorite songs. And then there was one point it got a bit painful. So I said, okay, let me find like the coolest song that my wife will dig a lot. And I just clicked Peg by Steely Dan.
Oh yeah.
I wasn't even thinking about it. It just happened. And then at the moment the guitar solo started, the kid was born.
Oh wow.
So I messaged Jay Graydon on Facebook and I said, "Hey, my daughter was born to your guitar solo." He was like, "Cool."
Oh wow. That's amazing. Yeah, I've met John Harrington a couple times, the current guitar player from Steely Dan, and last time he was here, they had the Steve Miller Band open. I don't know who was playing guitar, but I was there sitting in the audience. I got about 20 texts from people saying, "You should be doing this gig, not him." And I was like, man, I'm available. Give me a call, you know. But it was really cool. And then Steely Dan came on afterwards, and they were just killing, man. Keith Carlock, that whole band was just slamming. And then afterwards, got to hang with John and sort of chat with him about guitar and stuff at the hotel. And because I've done a couple of tours with Jim Pugh, who was the trombone player in Steely Dan. So Jim kind of organised this whole thing and said, come by the hotel and come and have a hang. And John's a super sweet guy. And I've met Adam Rogers a few times too, who's now the other guitar player with Steely Dan. So he's doing all the Walter Becker parts.
Okay.
And Adam's a badass guitar player, man. He can really, really play. You know, like heavy jazz cat, but then does like rock stuff. And I don't know if you've ever heard that band Dice he has. Have you ever heard
I haven't.
that?
No.
He's got like a Hendrixy type. He's a jazz guy, you know,
Okay.
like pretty heavy jazz guy. But in that trio, he plays a Marshall and a Strat and plays Hendrixy trio stuff. Have you ever heard of Nate Smith, the drummer?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so Nate's the drummer in the Dice
Awesome.
trio, and Fema Efron, and I saw them in LA.
The guy's just sick. He's just got like kick, snare, hats, and he just does everything with that. It's amazing.
Yeah, man, that stuff's heavy though. That Dice trio, you should check that out. It's like, I think it's one that you'd really like. And I mean, and I saw them at the Baked Potato, and Marshall had a 50-watt plexi and some rented 2x12, and he had a Strat, which I think is a 63, and he had it dimed and mic'd in a tiny little club, the Blue Whale in LA, and it was loud, but it wasn't nasty loud. It was like really sweet loud, and I was like, man, and I looked at the other guys who were there because they were all in the same band that we were touring with, and I was like, and you guys say I'm loud? This is like cranking.
Yeah.
And then the following night we went and saw Michael Landau at the Baked Potato.
Yeah.
And he had a Super Reverb and he had a Landau Hot Rod Deluxe.
Yeah.
Side by side, both dimed out. And they were mic'd and through the PA at the Baked Potato. But it was glorious. It was such a good guitar.
That's the thing about guys like Landau. They know how to get it loud without it hurting you. Like every note's like almost like got this brilliant texture to it, but it never like sounds too harsh or whatever.
But I think the thing too is the more you get the amp up, the sweeter it gets too.
Yeah.
Right? It warms up. So it's not like the more you can push it, the more it's going to compress and overdrive. And so sure, it's loud, but it's not a nasty loud, is it?
Yeah. I can show you that with the Soldano. Check this out. I'll just go back to the amp.
Yeah, please do.
So I'm just gonna start with it maybe around like 3 or something, and just watch when I get to around 6, it'll just go whoomp, and you'll hear it, and that's where I leave it at. Okay. Now, like the low end just fills out and
woof, didn't it?
Yep.
That's the
and
thing.
Then I can get away with turning my guitar volume down to like around 6. I don't have to have it on 10.
Have you ever cranked up a Tweed Deluxe?
No, I haven't actually.
I've got my Victoria back there, and it's completely the opposite of what most people think, because they see this little wee 1x12 20-watt amp. That thing's got more bottom end than almost any of my other amps. More than the Bassman, which is like twice the size. But there's something about the way that circuit works, and when you get it compressing, and there's a point where it just becomes bad. It doesn't become better. It's like 9 or 10 is about your max.
Yeah.
Above 10, it just farts out, and the bottom end falls apart. And but it's interesting. Almost takes on a fuzz character. It's a really intriguing amp.
Because for the longest time I was chasing the guitar sound on one of these nights and wondering like what fuzz pedal was he using. He's saying, I just turned my Tweed Deluxe up. And apparently Line 6, when they did the pod, they wanted to borrow his Tweed Deluxe to profile it, and he said no.
It's funny you say that, because I heard that song on the radio the other day, and I thought, and I remember hearing it and thinking at first, is that a fuzz? And I was like, no, it sounds like that Tweed Deluxe thing.
Yeah.
Which is almost a fuzz, but not quite, but it's sort of a different thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the closest
Yeah.
I've got was the full-tone Ranger into the Bella. Maybe I'll drop a snippet of that clip.
But it's interesting too, if you have a Tweed Deluxe and you take an
Yeah.
amp with a humbucker in the neck, it just becomes muddy as heck. Just doesn't really work. But you take a Tweed Deluxe and dime it and then go bridge pickup.
Yeah.
It's almost Marshall-esque, but it's different. It's a different character. I mean, I know the Bassman became the Marshall, but
Yeah.
but the Tweed Deluxe is there's a mid-range thing. It's low mid punch. You know what I mean? And there's a bit where it goes, like you said, the woomph that happens, and that's kind of the sweet spot. That's not easy to always be able to play at that volume.
Yeah, and different amps have a different, it's a different point on the master or on the volume.
It depends on what tube you have in there too, right?
Exactly, and it's kind of also dependent upon how hard you're hitting it. If you're going to play a Les Paul through it, the sweet spot's going to be in a different place than a Strat, for example.
And with a boost pedal for sure, or compressor or anything like that. So
how hard you're hitting that front end makes all the difference.
Did you see on Anderton's they got the JTM 45s and put about 6 of them together, and it was interesting because they didn't like the Marshall JTM 45, the gold panel one, whatever you call it. Is that a Plexi? No, I don't think it's a Plexi because I think the Plexi is the one before.
Mm-hmm.
They
the
had
metal panel
one.
was 70s, early 70s is when they went to them.
Yeah, so it must have been, one was a Plexi, one was an early one. The silvery panel, which was even earlier, and one was a Tone King, and one was a Victory, which and then one was some other thing, but it was interesting because they found the Marshall the darkest of a lot of them, but I'm like, that's what they do, right? They're not, they do have quite a dark. I mean, you can make it brighter.
Especially that circuit, the JTM 45. That's probably got the most bass in the both preamp and power amp, because
I love it.
As the years kept going by, they kept on making them leaner and brighter in the preamp. They started cutting the amount of bass all the way up to the power amp. So just see, it chunked a bit better, but then you kind of lost a bit of the bloom, especially with the Strat. That JTM 45 is a great amp to play.
Oh yeah,
and it cleans up beautifully.
Yeah, I want to get one now. I've had one before and I sold it, and I never should have sold it. It was a great amp, but they're a great amp at one volume.
I've got exactly the same thing to say, because I did have a JDM 45 and had taken it down to Clary. The guy bought it from, in fact, he lived in Wellington, and I had a Mesa Boogie Mark III, and for some reason I decided it'd be good to swap for that. So we met halfway at Taupo. We both drove, and we met, met there, and we swapped amps, and I drove back. And then he had given me it was a reissue, but he had given me the hand-wired circuit board. So I just took that to Clary, and he installed that. And Clary was like, I also have these old mustard capacitors, which were in the original Marshall. So should I put those in? I said, yes, please. So he put those in. And it was pretty much like a dead-on, like as close as you could get to a vintage one. And then I remember I was working a day job, and then I got a job as in a recording studio. And I was like, okay, listen, I need to, create a little bit of a buffer, because I'm quitting work. So I just need a bit of, for rent and everything like that. So I sold that amp, and I got a great amount for it at that time. I think it sold for like $2,000 or something. So, that kind of paid like the first 6 months of, not having a day job. But while I had it, Wilco was touring New Zealand, and they used that amp on the whole tour. So that's the only kind of reason I, would sometimes think about it. And it's like, it'd be nice to have that amp back sometime.
I'll bet, yeah. So speaking of which, what gear have you had that, like the gear that got away?
Or the stuff that got away? There's very little, actually, because I'm surrounded by a bunch of great gear. And, if from this lot of something I had to sell, I'd be a bit sad about it. My very first good Strat was a Mexican Floyd Rose Strat, and I did a whole bunch of mods and everything to it, but it did have a pretty good sound. And by the time we moved here and everything, it ended up at my parents' house, and it's still there somewhere, but we can't seem to find it. But if I do
Oh,
find it, I'll be happy to see that guitar again. And the most obvious one was my first proper American Strat was this 97 Fender Lone Star Strat, one humbucker on the bridge and two single coils. And I used that guitar for 17 years, man. That was like such a, part of me almost. And I was flying to Canada via Air Canada, and the connection was in Heathrow, and the guitar didn't make the connection. So it's still missing to
oh
this
no,
day.
oh no.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's one of those.
for me, the worst one, and as an Aucklander, yeah. So, my wife and I went to Auckland, and we walked into a rock shop on K Road, and there was this guitar. At first, I thought it was a Telecaster. I picked it up and played it, and I'm like, man, this thing's beat up. It had a humbucker in the neck pickup. It was like there was no finish left on it. It was all beat up. It was a Broadcaster,
Okay.
and they wanted $5,000 for it because it was so beat up. And I looked at my wife and I'm like, can I? And she was like, yeah, we don't have the money. We just spent like $50,000 on our wedding or whatever, And I was like, please. and I kind of buckled and I went, all right then. And I like to this day I still regret not buying that bloody Broadcaster because
Was it like was it like the Andy Summers thing with the humbucker on the neck and the telly single coil?
yeah,
in the
someone had
bridge?
routed it for a humbucker, but
Oh, okay.
still you could put it back and you could.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
leave
and
the
it
humbucker
was
and it's
still,
cool.
I mean, it was the bones of a Broadcaster, like them, The other two I have like that got away was I had a 70s Strat, and it was nasty. I'm glad I got rid of that. It was one of the really heavy hardtail ones. It was
Yeah.
the ash body, and I must have weighed 10 pounds. Like I shouldn't hear, that was okay. But I traded that guitar and a Music Man, a 70s Music Man, for a Porridge Smith, which I still have back there, custom 20. I have a custom 22 3 soap bar, 3 P90s, and when that Porridge Smith came in, it was $12,000 at the time, because
Okay.
Porridge Smith at those days was like an actual custom
Yeah.
guitar company. And the guy who owned the shop bought it, and then one day he said, "Look, I'm going to sell that Porridge Smith. I want $6,000 for it." So I sold it. I traded in the 70 Strat. I traded in the Music Man, and I gave him $4,000 cash, which at the time was a lot of money,
I'm sure.
And bought to buy the Porridge Smith. But I
Yeah.
never should have given up that Music Man. Have you ever seen those? The Sabre, the Leo.
Yeah,
It was the
I
Leo
think,
Fender
yeah,
ones,
yeah. Yeah.
And it had a really interesting thing. It had two controls, but three controls.
Okay.
One was volume, and one was treble, and one was bass.
Okay.
And it actually had a battery because it was active.
Oh, okay.
It was active treble and bass, and it was so handy because sometimes you go to the neck pickup and it's dark. Well, now I can just notch down the bass, and it's actual. It's not like a tone control; it's actual bass frequencies. It had a Strat type neck, and it was kind of on the heavy side, but it was that thing sounded great, and I regret selling it.
Awesome. I'm going to show you something. Speaking about my mom's house, I found something there that you would may find interesting. One sec, let me put this down. This is my early CD collection. This is some 90s or late 90s, early 2000s Jeff Beck, which is
Oh, it's Scott
awesome.
Henderson, Dog Party.
Yeah, Dog Party. It's a great album. There's
Oh, yeah.
one part in Dog Party, he's playing Hound Dog, and then you can hear his cable come out, and he goes, "Oh shit!" and then goes back in. I love that he left that in. This is
Man, speaking of which, have you ever noticed with Roxanne at the beginning of it, you hear that piano gliss?
he
that
sits on the
happens?
piano.
He sat on the piano, and then he laughed, and they left it in.
That's awesome.
That was hilarious. I had no idea about. I mean, how many times have I heard that song and I had no idea that was why? So good.
Yeah. Here's some heavy metal era Gary Moore, which I was
Oh,
heavily
yeah.
into at the time. Still actually love listening to that once in a while. It's a great album, actually, this one. Everyone should check it out. It's called Corridors of Power.
Yeah, I've got that.
If you
It's
can
great.
see that. Great album. What else
Man,
is
he had
there?
the fattest, thickest Les Paul tone, didn't he?
No, he was using a Strat on this album. And
Was
the
it a
next
Strat on
one,
it?
yeah, it was a
Oh.
Strat to a DS1 into a Super Bass Marshall.
Oh,
what a
I was
killer
thinking
guitar
like Still
sound.
Got the Blues and stuff like that.
Yeah,
which is like-
came much later, and that was the.
I have that album though for sure.
I used to have this one on cassette before I bought it on CD. That's what got me into
Hmm.
Gary Moore. It's called Ballads and Blues. There's
Yeah.
an amazing instrumental track on there called Blues for Narada, which is still one of my favorite instrumental guitar sounds. And that has got to be like in my top three guitar sounds, great guitar sounds of all time. If like it, I think it sounds like a Les Paul through either a Marshall or a Soldano, which was kind of what he was using at the time.
Mm. Yeah, because he
So,
did use Soldano for a while, didn't he?
yep,
Like
he
became
certainly
part of his
did.
thing.
Yeah, and this is another very underrated album he played on with Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker called Bruce Baker Moore BBM. And there's
All
some
right.
amazing. There's one that you should check out called Why Does Love Have to Go Wrong? That one and Where in the World. Those are two great songs from this. There's a bit of Cream kind of thing going on, which I wasn't that, it's like, why bother rehashing that? But there's a few like original songs on this which do sound like really nice.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Um,
Cream's already done Cream, so why
I
do
found
your own
this
thing?
one. I found this one for $2 at Cash Converters.
Ah, Hotwired, yeah.
Brent Mason. Yeah, it's a great album, man.
Which he named his pedal after too.
Yeah, exactly. This was way before the Wampler came into existence.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And
Yeah, the album came before the pedal.
this is a hilarious one. It's called Dub Side of the Moon. So it's Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, dub style. And
Oh
um,
really?
you know how Money starts with the sounds kitching, all the Money sounds on loop. So they've done like all the sound of the lighter going and then the bong going blub 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 blub. And at the back they've written that like there's a thing that you play the Dark Side of the Moon at the same time you watch the Wizard of Oz, and it all like seems to sync up. So they said, yeah, this one syncs up with the Wizard of Oz too.
There is a jazz guy who did a jazz album that was based
Uh-huh.
on Dark Side of the Moon. Oh,
Really?
what's his name? Was it someone like Samuel Howell or someone like that? Took those tunes and basically had a jazz organ type group, and it was actually really cool. It worked really good. I mean, they're great compositions. So, and I see you've got your Pink Floyd T-shirt there on. So,
And
why not?
the poster behind it,
And the
which
poster, of course. Yeah.
my daughter's counted. She says that there's 12 bums on this photo.
I had that poster on my wall back in the day too. It's great.
Yeah. This is another killer album with David Lindley on it, and this is the first time I heard a
Oh yeah.
Dumble in action, running on empty. And
Have you ever played through a Dumble?
no, I've played to Dumble-esque amps, but not an OG Dumble. Here's another one where I learned a bunch of pentatonic licks from when I had it on cassette. Thin Lizzy's Chinatown, and that
I've got to
had
check that album out.
that had Snowy White on guitar. And when I saw Roger Waters, he had Snowy White on guitar. I was like, oh, that's the same guy on that Thin Lizzy album I learned a bunch of licks from. And this one. This one had Gary Moore on it, called Black Rose, and I think everyone should listen to the guitar solo on the title track, which is this album came out in the year I was born, funnily enough.
So would he
And
be one of your big influences, like,
at the time, yeah.
but still now, or
It's gone so deep, it still is part of you. It never leaves,
yeah, he was
So,
one of mine too back in the day. And I think I told you the other day, I actually played Still Got the Blues for one of my recitals at music school. Still Got the Blues was one I played. I played Dance of Maya, the John McLaughlin Mahavishnu thing, and I did not Dancing with the Blues, what was it called? Brush with the Blues,
Brush with
the
Louise, yeah.
Jeff Beck thing. But yeah, Still Got the Blues I played because I was really into Gary Moore. You know,
Here's
yeah, so
Here's
great.
another memory. This is when I saw Sean Lane in 2003. He had come down to Delhi, and that was one of his last gigs, in fact, because he passed away not too long after. So that was his. He burned these himself, and he wrote it. There's no
So
like.
he's a self pirate.
Yeah, he pirated himself. This is the
Pirated
live
himself.
version. Yeah, the live version of Powers of Ten, which is an amazing album.
Man, you
The
should
thing
put
is,
that on the wall. Don't even play it. Like just put it in
This-
a case, put it on the wall.
he's one of those guys that had like all the chops in the world, and yet he never forgot that it was all about music, not about showing what you could play. And that's
Oh, he would shred sometimes though too. Sometimes he'd overdo it.
he
but-
would. I would hear him with Jonas Hellborg and stuff like that, and yeah, but that particular album, like the composition on it, is amazing. And another album like that is Lyle Workman's Harmonic Crusader,
Oh yeah.
and like
Oh yeah.
the chops are like up the wazoo, but the guy can write, and
Oh yeah.
that's what sets it apart. That's kind of the one I heard Lyle on for the first time, Jellyfish. Amazingly produced album, by the way. Like the drum sounds on this are immaculate. So sometimes I use it as a mix reference just to see what you can get away with. And yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I was there's
It's
all
really
these that I've heard.
fascinating looking back on that stuff, isn't it? And kind of
Yeah,
going,
look at this Blue Murder with John Sykes. This is another very. It just came and went. Coverdale page.
oh yeah.
There's some cool tracks on that. Steve Vai, Passion and Warfare. Just looking the Michael Schenker, UFO, Strangers in the Night. Eric Johnson, all the '90s stuff. Joe Bonamassa, New Day Yesterday. King's X, Dogman, like one of the fattest
Oh man, I
guitar
love
sounds.
King's X. Man, and the thing I find with King's X is that they it was to sit. I remember like in my early 20s, like trying to figure out how to play some of that stuff.
Yeah.
And there was no real tabs. Maybe there was a little bit on the internet. Or I mean, it wouldn't have even been internet then if I don't remember. But I remember sitting down trying to figure that stuff out, and it was just really unusual bar numbers and chord voicings and stuff. And I remember just going, "These guys are aliens." Like,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really sound that way. You'd listen to King's X and you go, "It's just kind of rocking music that had a real,
Yeah.
not a heavy punch about it, but a punch." But it, yeah, super clever. Like,
They actually predated a lot of the grunge stuff with the whole drop D tuning and everything. So
Yeah.
like but that particular album was produced by Brendan O'Brien, and I think the guitar sound also got like way heavier on that. That title track when it just comes on, it just hits you like a wall of bricks or something like that. It just like a serious like sonic onslaught, and I think he was using the dual rectifier at the time, which was a bit of
right.
a departure
Should
from his.
explain why it's a heavier tone, too.
Yeah, exactly. But
'Cause
it
I
was
always
a
thought of him
90s
as
thing,
that.
so
Yeah, he to me he always had like a more mid-rangey kind of sound,
Yeah.
and also yeah, like I said, the weird chord voicings and bar numbers and things, and just a really interesting, very underrated guitar player, I think.
yeah, underrated band, I
Ty.
would think, because
Underrated
like
band.
even the vocal harmonies are just amazing, in that
Yeah.
context. You don't really like it's almost like the Beatles meet Soundgarden or something like that, in terms of
Yeah.
juxtaposition. So I always thought that they should have been a lot more famous, but it's at least we had the pleasure of listening to them all these years.
But you know what I mean? It's like to be famous isn't necessarily just about the music, is it?
Yeah.
Right, you have to have a certain look. You have to have the right marketing. It really, I think it's got more about the management than anything else.
Probably.
And I think
I
it
mean,
always has been like that.
yeah, they did have a big break. I think they played the Woodstock 94, 99, one of those two. And, it's just that it's just almost like a very well kept secret. Like among
That's what's
musicians.
cool about it, though, too,
Yeah.
isn't it? Right? Had they had major success, we might not have
Yeah.
liked them as much. Right? Because all of a sudden everyone would be like, "Oh, they're sellouts,"
Yeah.
they're whatever,
Yeah, I think both Doug Pinnick and Ty Tabor, they had cool interviews on Pete Thorne's channel. I think he's a big fan of theirs as well.
Yeah.
So it was cool to watch him interview
Used
both
to
of
see
them.
Ty quite a bit in the old Guitar Player magazine and
Hmm.
stuff like that, and Total Guitar and whatever else was around back in the day. Yeah, but yeah, pretty much an underground thing, wasn't it? But that's all good. Yeah, interesting.
So is the weekend going to be very busy for you? You reckon?
Yeah, I'm actually I was supposed to go on a fishing trip tomorrow, but that's
Okay.
been cancelled because of bad weather.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to go up and spend the day with the family, and then I've got a gig on Sunday with Duncan Haynes, who's a really great piano player. He's just moved back to New Zealand. He's been living in Paris, I think, for the last
Okay.
10, 20 years. It's funny because being a piano player, you would think he would select a whole lot of music for his gig that was piano
Yeah.
music, but no, it's all guitar player stuff. So we're playing Pat Metheny and Gillard Hexelman and John Schofield tunes and
Cool.
Jim Hall and things like that. And so it's meant I've had to work pretty hard to try and get these tunes together, because they're all guitar melodies and guitar stuff. And surprisingly, like the Jim Hall thing, You would think being a guitarist, he'd write stuff that you could play easily on the guitar. No, none of it falls nicely under the finger.
Yeah, he's not giving you a break.
There's one line that goes.
Ouch.
I mean, that just. And there's another one that goes. You know, who does that when you're a guitar player?
Can we break something just trying to play that?
Yeah, it's just like. But so it's been fun, but it'd be good. It's only an hour set, and we're playing in the Vin, so it's a really good band. The drummer, I think he just graduated last year from jazz school.
Okay.
So I've only really played once with him on a jam session. I went and sat in on a jam session, and he played, and he's really good. And the bass player I've known for a while. He's been around for a while. A guy called Seth Boy.
Okay.
And Seth does is a good composer and good arranger and what have you. So, and then Duncan's a beast. The piano player's like he's exceptional. So, so it's going to should be a good gig.
Awesome.
And I'm going to take I've got the Tone Master Deluxe. Tone Master FR the 12 version. So I'm going to take that and try it with the Fractal and see what it's like on a gig, and maybe that might be the option for me. So,
awesome.
We'll see.
What
about you? Have you got any gigs this weekend?
I am going to be chilling a lot this weekend and just catching up on some sleep, which is long overdue. I mean,
sad news that Hashigo Zaki's now closing in Wellington.
Oh, is it? The same one you mentioned the last time?
Yeah, the place I play all the time. They're closing on March 8th.
Oh, damn.
Gutted. It's like the one place in town where you can really do what I do, which is improvised groove music, right? Funk, fusion-y type stuff. Blues, rock, jazz stuff. And, it's kind of like the 55 bar in New York.
Yeah.
It's our 55 bar and it's gone.
Oh, that's sad.
So it's closing, so...
Yeah.
Really gutted about that, so I don't know what... Kind of thinking about the trio that I have with Darren and Mike. Where would be a suitable band to be able to... venue to be able to do what we want to do.
I was going to say you should come and do some gigs in Auckland, but yeah, I know it's a bit of a mish.
100%, man. I've been thinking about it actually quite a bit, about coming up there and doing one. I mean, and I know we've had discussions about it, so we'll come up and do it for sure.
Yeah.
And use an Auckland rhythm section, I think, for that one. But yeah, I was really disappointed when I heard that was closing. I was like,
oh man, too
but
bad.
venues come and go, I suppose.
We've got a comment here from the last one before we close. I just thought we should read that out because we don't seem to get too many of those.
Sure.
So
maybe that's why, because we leave it to the end.
Yeah. Altair 0800 says, really enjoy these fellas. Like to hear two skilled musicians from the NZ circuit chat. Well, thank you. Warren, you mentioned you have a gig at the Viaduct coming up. Do you post details of things like that anyway on my Instagram stories? That's usually where I would do that. Another question.
Do you have a website where you put your stuff? Or?
No, I used to, and then I got fed up of updating it, so it's kind of like half dead at this time, which I think...
People don't really check Facebook pages, websites, do they? It's probably they're more likely to go to your Instagram or your Facebook, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I usually do it like a couple of days before and on the day of the gig. I just post a little blat. Otherwise, I hate doing this promotion shit, but yeah, unfortunately, it's a necessary evil these days.
It seems to be, yeah.
Another question, I often find myself getting at least 50% worse on stage compared to when I practice. Any practical tips or things you guys do to help with that? Cheers. P.S. Loving the Trilby, Nick. I think was that your hat? The Trilby?
Oh, not sure.
Okay.
Maybe.
And
you first then. So how would you get it past that being 50% worse on stage?
I've had that happen every time, like especially when I started, playing in front of a bunch of people. Then I came across this Scott Henderson quote, and he said to think of it as a participation rather than performance, where you have to show people what you can do. It's just basically having a conversation with people on stage, just interacting with fellow musicians. Most of the time, you're friends with them, so that's like a cool hang with your mates. It just happens to be on stage in front of people. But yeah, if you just think of yourself as part of a bigger thing. If you're a solo guitar player, then yeah, I'll be shitting too as well. But if you've got a bunch of people to play with, I think it's best to make the most of that and just look at
It's
it.
funny
as
how
well.
that changes, though, isn't it? Because when you play solo, now
Yeah.
all the emphasis is on you, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's funny, isn't it, that how our minds work, that our perception of things is
Yeah.
that everyone thinks we suck, and you missed a note and everybody heard it, and we think these sort of things in our mind, and yet reality isn't that at all, is it?
Yeah.
Right?
I think if
People
you're doing
don't notice everything, and so I think as soon as you come to peace with that and going that people don't notice every little thing that you, because you know the music intimately because you're
Yeah.
about to perform it, they don't know it that intimately, so they only know what you're showing them.
Yeah.
And so therefore if you show them, like if you go like this and you go they go, oh, he just screwed up.
yeah.
And or if you go, oh shit, then they go, he just screwed up, and they're kind of looking for that kind of stuff. So I think part of it is playing it cool, part of it's being prepared. Like the more prepared I am, the less nervous I get, because I know I can do what's required because I've done the preparation. So I think that's a lot of it, you know.
Yeah. This another friend of mine said, if you make a mistake on stage, just look angry at the drummer like it was his fault.
Yeah, or just do it again,
Yeah.
do it twice, and now they think
Yeah.
it's on purpose.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or you do that BB King thing, right? Where it, you know how he always, BB would always go, oh, not always, but he would go something like, and then, right? And there was one video I remember him going, and like being a fret out, and he was like, whoa! And he just sort of made a joke of it, you know, that he missed it by a whole fret, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, what else can you do?
Make a joke about it. It's all fun. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, I've
It's only
seen.
music though too, isn't it? It's only music. It's not the end of the world if whatever happens, you know.
Have you ever seen the 24 Nights Eric Clapton video?
No.
It's like he does 24 nights at Royal Albert Hall, and first he starts off as a trio, then he
Wow.
goes to a 4-piece, then he's with the 9-piece band, and finally with the orchestra. But there's one thing where I think he's playing White Room or something like that. He hits like the most hideous clam, and he just does this. Sorry, and he left it in the video, which is amazing. Most people would just be going on, cleaning that bit out. He left it.
But that's the best stuff, right? Because it's real, right? It's a real thing. I remember someone coming up to us once at one of my gigs at the Blues Club, and we were playing, and he said, he goes, man, I just love seeing you guys play. He's a regular there,
Uh-huh.
And he goes, I just love seeing you guys play. And I said, and the singer said, not bad for a band that doesn't rehearse, does it? And he said, you guys are better when you don't rehearse. He goes, because it's raw and it's happening, and whatever happens, we go with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Go with the flow.
Any other questions?
Yeah. I think that's
Or
the one for the week. I think we're doing good.
Leave some questions, people. We'll answer them at the beginning next time, right?
Yeah, promise. Yeah,
Promise.
We'll make it interesting.
I promise
Anyway,
that'll never happen.
Here's us signing out for this week, and we'll catch you again soon. Thanks, Nick. It's been a good, fun chat with you.
Yeah, awesome, Warren. Cheers, man.
Cool.
Thanks,
See
people,
ya.
for watching.
Bye-bye.
Bye.